Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, my dear learners. I am Dr. Muhammad Tanveer from Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, Jamia Millia Islamia. For this session, our topic is dealing with physically, socially, emotionally and marginalized children in the classroom. In the previous lesson, we learnt about the social diversities in India and its educational implications. In this lesson, we will be dealing with the special needs of various categories of socially disadvantaged students. We will try to understand their problems, particularly in educational setup, and talk about how can we as a teacher help them to ensure their inclusiveness and to overcome their problems. So, after this discussion, after this lesson, you should be able to, or you should be prepared to define students with a special educational needs. You should be able to explain the special need in relation to conditions within or outside the students. You should be able to discuss the social, psychological and educational adjustment of children with special needs. You should be able to discuss the general presumptions and perceptions regarding the differently abled children, and you should be able to describe the teacher's role in meeting the educational, social and psychological need of these students. So, let's start it with socio-cultural diversity. We learnt about caste and tribal groups. Let's understand the associated educational problems and a special need of those students, those children from those groups coming to our classroom. First, let's discuss about the problems of scheduled castes. In this discussion, we will limit ourselves on behavioral discrimination toward this section of students in and outside the classroom, leading to a negative self-image and low educational achievement. Role of teachers in building a congenial social and educational environment inside and outside the school, and need for sensitization of children, parents and community as regards social incentive schemes and such students to promote literacy and provide vocation. Actually, the scheduled castes represent one of the most traditionally downtrodden and socially and educationally backward section of Indian society. The Constitution of India has sought to rectify this by providing for positive action for their upliftment in the directive principles of state policy. Scheduled caste is a term given to those castes in India which were untouchables, mainly because they were involved in petty, unclean occupations like cleaning, sweeping, scavenging, shoemaking, etc. etc. They were considered to be outcasts and were earlier referred to as antyajas, pariyas, adishuras and like that. They are also known as Dalit. This term was given by Gandhiji. They are engaged in occupation which other castes, usually upper castes, do not do. Further, they were not permitted to use the public amenities, tanks, wells, rivers, and were prohibited from going to the temples, and the worst of all, they were denied any kind of education. This led to further deterioration of their condition as regards opportunities for social mobility by acquiring other job skills other than the traditional work meant for them. This resulted in the community becoming backward in all spheres of life. In newspapers, in media, even today, like you must be seeing there are some reportings regarding misbehavior toward those peoples from scheduled caste. I took it from IGNOU material, which is developed for B.Ed students. Some other research papers which were published time to time, trying to put or discuss some of the documented experience of exclusion faced by the Dalit children. Although there are very, very bitter experiences, those have been published in newspapers in different form of media, but those experiences which have appeared in research papers which have been much discussed, I am trying to put those researches or those documented experiences here. We know that for the successful implementation of RTE, that is right to education, these will have to be systematically addressed. Otherwise, the vision of RTE cannot be achieved. Exclusion practices are not only done by people in society, but some of these practices unfortunately are done by some teachers also. In a school, the members of the peer group, the fellow students, the classmates, they do such exclusions, as well as there are systematic exclusions. Although the system tries its best to practice the fair things, but it's actually the people who run the system. So when it is ingrained in the psyche of the people, so these things comes up. Now let's first of all discuss the exclusion of Dalit children by teachers. What are those instances which have been documented? One of the instances like asking Dalit children to do menial tasks in schools, including like cleaning of the school premise or even the toilets. But children from upper castes are never allotted such work. See, the cleaning of the school premise is not something bad. The student should be or must be involved in cleaning activities. Actually, in Japan, it's the responsibility of the students to clean the whole class and the school premise. But what we see here, that the menial job or the cleaning is specifically forcefully done by Dalit children, and the children from upper caste never indulge in such things. This is exclusion. The second instance, like denying Dalit children the use of school facilities, common facilities, including water source, drinking water source, like keeping the potable water or the drinking water, the drinking tap segregated, even preventing Dalit children from using their school laboratories or containers used to store drinking waters. The other instance, like excluding Dalit children from public functions in the school. These include non-participation in the morning assembly or other public events such as Republic Day or Independence Day celebration, excluding those children in participating those celebrations. Rather, they are hardly, not always, some of the malpractices which have been documented, that they were hardly made to come and sit by side or sit at a remote place just to see only. They can't participate in the celebration program. The other instance is like making derogatory remark about the Dalit children, their supposed lack of cleanliness and inability to keep up with the academic work. Derogatory remarks about that, like you belongs to that caste, you can't do such thing, you can't do good things. The other instance, like not giving time and attention to those children in the classroom, such as not checking their homework or the classwork, not answering their queries, even rebuking them for asking questions in the class. For a student, just a glance of teacher matters a lot. If suppose you are lecturing and you should have a sweeping view of the class, if you don't address them, if you don't put a glance on them, it gives a negative impact even in the achievement of the students. The other instance, like segregated seating arrangements in the classroom with Dalit children made to sit separately or outside the classrooms, some instances have been noted. Undue harshness in reprimanding Dalit children by teachers, for instance, in scolding children for coming late to their schools, in resolving fight between the children, condoning name calling by upper class children, etc., etc. Reprimanding children may be needed sometime, is not bad, but what constitute exclusion or what constitute bad practice is harsh reprimanding to only Dalit children while being very soft to or being encouraging for the good behavior to non-Dalit children or the children from upper class. In the same way, there are some exclusion practices which are done by the peer groups, calling Dalit children by derogatory caste names, not including Dalit children in games and plays activities in the classroom or in break time when children go out to play. Dalit children often return to their own neighborhood to play with their non-enrolled Dalit children who are friends from the same community. But those children, other than, the non-Dalit children, do not like to play with those Dalit children in their school. The other instances, like not sitting with the Dalit children in the classroom. Actually, why do the children do like these things? They see it, they absorb this thinking from their home. If the exclusion practices are going on at their home, if they see their the older peoples are doing like this, so they try to replicate it in the school. There are also instances of exclusion of Dalit children by the system. Usually the system never makes the school system or the education system or any system deliberately do not make such system in which any person get excluded because it is against the inclusive culture or inclusiveness. But we know that the system is run by people. So the people make ways to do such exclusions within the system also. Some of the exclusions, like incentive schemes and scholarships meant for Dalit children not being properly administered. They have been launched by the system, but such schemes are not properly administered by the people in system, or putting such conditions or such situations where suitable candidates are not found, giving insufficient recruitment or to Dalit teachers. Insufficient recruitment. There are reservations, there are seats available for them, but usually what happens that system cannot find suitable candidate to recruit at that position. The other instance, like a lack of acknowledgement of Dalit role models, like Ambedkar in the curriculum. If the curriculum do not have the role model, then the children who are taught by that curriculum do not feel ownness of the curriculum. Other instance of exclusion of Dalit children by the system is like lack of sensitization of teachers in teacher education and trainings. Lack of sensitization. What are the recommendations which are made for the inclusion? Based on the above known practices of discriminations, there are many recommendations which have been made for their proper inclusion in true sense, like establishing norms of behavior within the school for teachers and students, setting up a system of reporting on discriminatory practices at a school level has also been done at many places, and the complaint boxes are kept that are regularly dealt with at the SMC meetings, and suggested interventions are done. Some of the recommendations, like a timely detection of the forms of discrimination practiced in a particular context by either teacher or students, this is not an easy task, as many forms of discrimination have become part of the accepted behavior that go unnoticed and unchallenged by the majority. The people do not find any bad in it. Finding ways of listening to the children's voice would be crucial to this exercise. Listening the voices of those Dalit children, that are they feeling some exclusions by any act which do not apparently feel like, or which do not apparently look like it is a practice of exclusion. Timely redressal of instances of discrimination at the level of social and local authority. Delay in taking actions can lead to the discouragement of the part of parents and teachers. There are 3 identifiable stages in the spread of education of scheduled caste. Opening of separate schools for scheduled castes, a struggle for equality in joint schools, and the third is introduction of special incentives for education of SCs. Education play an important role. We all know it, that role of education is very important. It actually prepares the individual for occupation, vocations, and thereby creating a self-confidence in earning one's own livelihood. And secondly, giving a better standard of living to the disadvantaged groups. An individual's upward mobility in society may be hindered by various factors, of which personality is one of the most important factors, which hinder the upward mobility of a person. The student live in an environment where high aspiration is encouraged, then that student is possibly has more probability for the success in his or her life. But this is not so in case of students from lower castes or economic strata, because they do not have role model in their immediate society. We need to change this perception and shoulder more responsibility toward this section of the society. Now, let's understand the special needs of scheduled tribes students, or the students from scheduled tribes. First of all, who are scheduled tribes? Scheduled tribes actually in India generally live in inaccessible areas in a small and a scattered village or dhanis. As a result, providing facilities such as food, clothing, shelter, education to these tribes is quite difficult. There are various factors to be kept in mind while teaching in the tribal areas, while teaching to tribal or teaching tribal students. I will discuss it one by one, what are those problems and how it could be come over. First of all, the raw enrollment ratio, sparsity or the thin scattering of educational institutes, habitations, high wastage and stagnation, absence of teachers from schools are few of the educational problems in the tribal areas. It is therefore imperative that the teacher should become responsible for the developmental activities, both educational and social, in those tribal areas. Considerable improvement in education among tribals is possible if the teachers are appointed and located within that region. The backwardness in education of the scheduled tribe is due to their apathetic and indifferent attitude toward education and lack of motivations in them. Some studies suggest these things. There are actually 2 main reasons for this. First, the formal education system is alien to them. That is, this formal education system is not adjusted to their socio-economic and cultural needs. Their needs are different, and what we teach in as a curriculum is different. It is more suited for people living in villages or people living in cities and towns. Their needs are quite different. A good section of those people live in tribal areas, which are forest areas. Secondly, the tribal have prejudices and suspicions toward the sincerity of non-tribal people, and there are many reasons for it. Like, our irresponsible behavior toward the consumption of natural resources, toward the exploitation of natural resources has created a lot of fear and anger to them. Tribal children mainly absent from school because they are required to help their parent in the household work and in agricultural operations, in agricultural work. The reason is correlated to increased absenteeism among tribal students during the period when agriculture operations are at its peak. So their parents and those children's they go to agricultural land and work for the people or work for the farmers, and this is the source, one of the main income source of the annual income source of those peoples. So they are disturbed by those agricultural, their education are mainly disturbed by those agricultural environments. A teacher has a major role in motivating parents and community for sending their children to schools, and they should be informed from time to time about special schemes and incentives available to them. Tribal students are more interested in working in open environment and close to nature and not in a classroom situation surrounded by the four walls. Have you ever held, as a teacher, have you ever held classes outside the classroom, under a tree or outside in park or somewhere, not in the closed four walls? If yes, you would have seen that there is difference, there is improvement in the students' behavior, attitude and learning. So this make a difference. The people who are adjusted to or who are habituated to living outside feel somewhat uncomfortable within the confinement of the four walls. Finding from studies reiterate that education of the tribals should be need-based, so that the students are able to see the relevance of what they are taught, as this may be the main reason for tribal students are being interested in studies. If what they study is not useful for them, or it is true for anyone, if what you study is not useful for you, why will you study it at all? Why will you waste your time? In the same way, they think that whatever their children learn in schools, if it does not help in their day-to-day life, there is no need to go to school at all. Since these children have come from a very different environment and most of them are first generation learner, I mean the children whose parent and grandparent or elder siblings have never been to the school, they have special needs which have to be catered to. For example, they might be deficient in scholastic areas, which would require extra compensatory tuitions or remedial education programs on a short or long-term basis. Studies have revealed that there is a social distance between the teacher and students in the tribal areas, if the teacher is not from that community. So those students, those tribal students, should be taught by teachers from amongst themselves. And this initiative or these practices we have seen in many states, like as in Shiksha Karmi schemes in Rajasthan. These children, the tribal children, come from poor families. They use local dialect for communication. Their usage and vocabulary of the standard language may be very poor. It is therefore important for the teachers to provide and ensure a non-discriminatory attitude and environment in school and in classroom. In this way, a teacher's behavior would be the most powerful tool to build a congenial environment, congenial atmosphere in the classroom. We also say that the textbook should have a local specific examples from their local environment and not the example which the children find difficult to relate with or to relate to. It is the responsibility of the teacher to transact the lessons in such a manner that there is no communication gap between the student and the teacher. Teaching should be based on the local environment so that students are motivated in their study. They should be able to link teaching learning activities with their environment. Unfortunately, our schools are not able to provide the type of education tribal students are interested in. So these were the problems of the tribal students, and in the same lecture I also mentioned that how those problems or how these problems can be sorted out or can be tackled with. Now let's discuss the education of girls or female students. Although the Constitution of India has provided for equalization of opportunities across gender, but girls continue to be a disadvantaged group of the society. Society continue to discriminate between boys and girls. The National Policy on Education in 1986 recommended that provisions should be made for equal educational opportunities for girls with a view to remove the disparities and attending to their specific needs. Now let's see what are those specific needs, what are those special needs and what are the reasons of the marginalization of girls from the schooling system. If you categorize those reasons which appears in different researches, you could easily categorize them into three categories basically. There may be some other problem which do not fit in this category, but usually those problems could fit in these three categories. One is expectation of domesticity from girl. Second is safety concerns, and the third is infrastructural barriers. What do I mean by expectations of domesticity? The expectations of the girl's child participation in family life seems to be a hindrance in her participation in schooling. Actually, girls are expected to contribute to the household far younger than the boys are. The implicit understanding being that a girl is being trained for a role as a wife, mother or daughter-in-law, whereas boys are being trained for an occupation. Girls get married at younger age than boys. This all create a negative environment or create resistance in girls' education. The second category is the safety concerns. Safety of the girls traveling alone is a major concern for Indian. The prevalent discourse surrounding recent events in media has brought to the forefront a long-standing problem of women's safety in our society. Whether rural society or urban society, more or less situation is almost same. Girls are not very much safe and secure while outside their home or while they are traveling. We also see a fear that educating girls cause excessive independence. It's the fear among the people that educating them will give them excessive independence, and this is seemingly manifested in the attitude that parents like to a girl's education. So this attitude manifests in many ways, in many forms. When you ask or when you interact with those parents, they put this fear in different words. Okay, so let's come to our third barrier, our third concern, that is the infrastructural barriers. We know for various reasons girls suffer more for the lack of infrastructure, much worse than the boys do. For instance, as of in one of the surveys, we found that 40% of all the government schools at a particular locality, 40% of all the government schools lack functioning common toilets. Functioning, I am talking about functioning common toilets. And another 40% lack the separate toilet for girls. So this is in infrastructural barrier. You know that the absence of separate toilet for girls make them very much vulnerable, and This in fact create even more reluctance to allow girls to be educated at those school premises. Let's discuss factors that contribute to a negative attitude toward the education of girls in our society. Women, by and large, are still considered incapable of competing with men, especially in areas of leadership, initiatives, and boldness. It is considered that women cannot be independent and are not capable of taking their own decisions. There are certain stigmas attached to the women because of discriminating perception of the society. For example, a widow, a spinster, an issueless woman, and a working woman are all treated as differently from a man with the similar characteristics. There are many social evils such as the dowry system, bride price, prostitution, child marriage, etc., etc. in the society which contribute to lowering the self-concept of the girls. Due to these evils, society view women as a burden. Based on the roles, expectations, boys and girls are discriminated. For example, girls are identified more with house-based functions. At times, even younger girls are expected to substitute for women in the home. In the economically poor families with working women, young girls look after household and take care of the younger children. This results in missing opportunities for the education. All these factors contribute to certain biases in the society which are unfortunately reflected in the school curriculum also, textbook, and even in our behavior with the students in the classroom, irrespective of our being male or a female teacher. Since we live in the society, we absorb such biases and sometimes we reflect or sometimes we practice those biases unknowingly with the students. So, you as a teacher deal with children in the classroom situations. We may like to reflect on the areas of discrimination between the boys and girls in the textual material also. Is there any discriminations appear in the textual material or not? First of all, let's think about that. Have you ever noticed a discrimination in the textual materials that you use in your classroom or that you use for your children? You may find two types of or two you can say two category of discrimination there. The one is also known as thematic content, which is you might have seen more topics dealing with men and their heroic effort than women in the textbook. The treatment of a particular theme may even lead to providing an inferior and stereotyped image of a woman. For example, all the courageous activity you will see that it is done by men. So, the genderized theme you can find it in some of the textbook, which are prepared without taking proper precautions. The second type of discrimination you could find is within the linguistic content of the book. In language textbook, the element of language are the main point and the theme serve just as the means to communicate or to teach those languages. Some of these expressions degenerate the status of women. For example, there may be a clause like, do you cry like a girl, or why are you crying like a girl? So these statements are that's gender biased statements, and the thematic content also reflect the social stigmas and taboos attached to the girls. When these content, the children are taught with these contents, what happens that those biases get a strength in those little children's mind. The other kind of discrimination which could occur is from teachers' behavior. Sometimes through very subtle behavior we also contribute to the misconceptions. For example, we may tell in a co-education class or a boys class that they should not behave like a girl, or in a girls class we may remark that it does not suit a girl to be a tomboy or do not act like a boy. By doing so, we also contribute to stereotyped behavior of discrimination between the boys and girls. Clear-cut gender segregations sometimes is also visible from the teacher's behavior. While it is important to analyze the content and gender ideologies in forming textbooks, it's equally important to see how these gender ideologies operates at the level of everyday classroom practices, which are also by this I refer to the hidden curriculum. Some crucial aspects of the hidden curriculum in a school would be like how classroom arrangements are made, the who sits where, are girls and boys separated, segregated, or they sit together, the differential task assignments to the students, like reinforcing that girls undertake the reproductive or domestic tasks like sweeping, cleaning, or boys should be given tasks which may require like collecting something from outside or like these things. The other area where you can see those subtleties of those differentiation or discrimination is like in extracurricular activities and the types of play. For example, other thing like subject choice. It is often known that girls are actively discouraged to take science subject, and the default option is home science. The other area like language used by the teachers and peers in the school environment, etc., etc. Again, many of these aspects would intersect with the other social categories like caste also. So this combination make when the two or three discrimination attributed to 2 or 3 things accumulated give a deadly combination. It is therefore important to make explicit difference aspect of the hidden curriculum and then undertake sensitization measures to work on the issue. Sensitization may not be enough and classroom practices would need to be monitored, and for this protocol and grievances redressal mechanism established at the school and other levels. This should be done at the very first. Bringing about change in these realms is extremely difficult, as they are based on deeply entrenched belief and attitude and therefore need to be worked on a sustained basis. As a teacher, you may like to reflect on to contribute to convey a positive image of the girls. What can you do? You should encourage healthy competition in the classroom. Healthy competition. Encourage your children, your students to be self-reliant and provide opportunities for preserving and fighting for the self-respect. Encourage your girl students for these things. Girls are not a burden. Bridegrooms need not to be bought and bride souls, and many other ill practices which happens in the society, which are practiced in the society. You need to inform your girls students regarding those problems. You need to discuss those problems in the class and tell bad a bad, tell a spade. Do not just cover it. In the classroom, you should highlight the capabilities of the girls. There is nothing like men's work or women's work. Work is work. It could be done by a man or it could be done by a woman. So there is nothing like a boy's task and a girl's task. Do not order or do not give orders in such a language, with such a language segregated for the boys and girls. There should be a fair representation of women's image and role. So more can be added in view of your own perception and comments. As a teacher, you need to sensitize yourself also so that you do not promote discrimination. Be aware of the education and school related factors that contribute to the discrimination and advocate the cause of girls' education so that they are not discriminated against in the society. If you want to study further, you may go to that references, or a lot of materials are also available. Thank you for your participation. Thanks a lot.